Welcome back to the Mintner Method. I'm your host, Andrew Mintner, and on today's episode, we are going to break down the Mountain West Championship. Now, this is a rematch from a Week 8 game between UNLV and Boise State. And I feel as if there are a lot of narratives going into this game that are kind of going overlooked. Realistically, the winner of this game is making the playoffs. So UNLV has just as much to play for as Boise State, and I feel as if they have the opportunity to show up and win a game that the odds makers are not counting them out of, but I feel like the majority of the betting public is. So when we're looking at this early down data here, they're both really good. There's not really any other way to put it. They're both pretty run heavy. UNLV surprisingly more so on early downs. And so when we're looking at early down data here, they're rushing the ball 68% of the time. They're very good at passing and rushing on early downs, similar to Boise State. And their defenses are okay. They're above average, but, they're okay. Now, when we go to the scheme data here, this is kind of where we kind of take a look at a couple of things that really stand out, okay? So UNLV in yards before contact is 29th overall, averaging 2.21 yards before contact when running the ball. Boise State is 96th overall. And that is a little eye-opening and concerning when you're going up against this style of offense that UNLV plays. Now, when it comes to yards after contact, they're very good. Once they get their hands on the running back, they wrap it up pretty quick. And this leaves them slightly above average in yards per attempt. Now, when we come to the opposite side, obviously this number here, yards after contact, first overall, that is ballooned by Ashton Jeanty. He's incredible. There's no other way around it, right? But let's be real here. UNLV is also very good at establishing the line of scrimmage on defense, and they're decent at tackling. They're not some bums, and that's why they rank 20th overall, or top 20 in rush yards per attempt and EPA per rush attempt. Now, from the scheme data, this is something else to look at. As you can see, UNLV runs a zone blocking scheme 59.3% of the time. So that's pretty much average, right? One thing that stands out here is Boise State is very bad in yards before contact on zone schemes, 112th overall. And they are much better in man schemes ranking-wise, but not from a yards perspective, right? And so that is something that, you can take a look at. UNLV is much better here. They're running man gap schemes 41% of the time, and they're averaging, more per yard, 5.73 yards, and they're 11 times more efficient EPA-wise. So if they lean more into the man schemes in this game, they can really have an advantage that many are not seeing, right? So when we go to Boise State, their scheme is primarily zone. 65% of the time it's a zone blocking scheme. That is UNLV's strength. Their weakness would be the man side of it. Boise State is very good at doing that too. So we'll see how that's going to implement and go forward, but that's not really the handicap I'm looking at for this game. Now, as we're rolling along here into the advanced statistics side, numerous things that stand out. Boise State does allow explosive plays, so does UNLV. But when we're looking at the metrics that matter here, you can see that, Boise State's susceptible in the secondary, 102nd in passing explosiveness allowed, 96th in defensive back havoc, only 5.3% of the time. And, they're also susceptible to the rush, 86th in rushing explosiveness. And you're going to kind of see in the advanced data here in a minute how that's kind of taking place, right? So this is one thing UNLV, this is a bad matchup. And in this aspect from the explosive standpoint, 102nd in rushing explosiveness allowed, 5th in overall rushing explosiveness for Boise State. None of that is shocking, being that Jeanty is having a once-in-a-lifetime season, and realistically should be the Heisman, but he will not. Unfortunately, he is going to be robbed of that, no doubt. So when we look at the modern offense side of it, we just want to see if there's anything that really stands out. We're not going to spend too much time on this because the stuff that I want to look at is what happened in the last game. So there's a lot of play action implemented in UNLV's offense. That is not surprising, as they are a more modern style offense. When we look at Boise State defending the play action, they are really bad. 98th in play action passing attempts. Not shocking, which you will see more here in a minute, why that's a spot where they can take advantage of it. From the motion side of it, that is not really something that UNLV does. They're 131st in motion per overall motion. They're 17.7% of their offensive plays have motion implemented in them. And they are really good at not doing that. They're 17th in overall EPA per non-motion attempt on offense, and they kind of understand that. And so, they do that. They lean into that, and they're very good at it. Boise State, on the other hand, they are going to up the motion, 48.8%. And, they're good in motion and non-motion attempts. So that is something that they're really solid at. And they kind of implement it in their rushing, 20th in rushing percentage with motion, and their passing. So it's a balanced attack. It's not like, okay, if they're just doing motion, they're going to be passing. If they're just doing motion, they're going to be rushing. It is balanced, and that is one thing that stands out. But when we dive into this advanced box score here, that's going to be the difference. So I got to send this text message real quick to my dad. There we go. All right. So let's go here. Modern defenses. We can look at the motion and see how that affects UNLV, which will be the big side of it. Now, they're 34th overall in EPA per motion attempt, so they're good at defending it. It's not something that they're really struggling against, right? And so then the most effective passing play is a play that involves play action and motion. We'll see, as you can see, UNLV does not do it a ton, 7% of the time. You kind of wish they would do it a little bit better, right? Or a little bit more, because they're 13th overall in the EPA, and that's something that they really could, implement more into their game plan. Boise State's decent, 47th in EPA, 12% of the time they attempt it. Again, obviously that's not their identity, though. So when we look at the defensive side of the ball, again, the play action mode, this is a part where UNLV could take advantage of Boise State. They're 20 times less efficient in defending that type of play versus just lining up and going, So, but I digress. So when we look at this advanced box score from week 9, now this is a while ago, so we can't just take this as the gospel. There's a couple of things that really stand out. Post-game win expectancy, UNLV was expected to win this game 2 out of 3 times. They obviously lost. Boise State's opportunities, they had 7. Both teams, once they reached the 40 against their opponent, very, very good. Boise State had a plus 6-yard advantage in starting field position. That is somewhat significant, but not anything that, just changes the entire outcome of the game, right? So when we look overall at the rushing side of the ball, you can see the advantages like the line yards per rush, which is what I was talking about, and just the overall stuff rate, just hugely an advantage of UNLV, right? Now, when you're looking at the havoc rate overall, you can see that the front 7 havoc for UNLV, that's not their game. Boise State did play very well with that, but that is something to consider, right? But the entirety of the game is decided in these next couple blocks, okay? From an efficiency standpoint, predicted points added, which is very similar to EPA, UNLV was extremely more efficient, double almost, in the rushing game. And then when we look at success rate, this is the whole story of the game, okay? UNLV 1% better in overall success rate, but when it was standard downs, so that's, first down or second and 6 or less, or third and 4 or less, Boise State 50% success rate on standard downs. When they were forced into passing downs, which would be second and 7 or more, or third and 5, or fourth and 5 or more, 13% success rate, a 25% advantage for UNLV in that area. And also they were more explosive. So the game is really going to be played inside that vacuum. And that's not to oversimplify it. And, I mean, like, you probably could have came to that conclusion yourself. But coming to a conclusion and also having the data to back it up is different than just saying something, it just is. So when we look at the rushing game logs for Ashton Jeanty, it is obvious as day. This was the hardest game of the year for him. 128 yards, the lowest yardage, and the lowest yards per carry. By a wide margin, mind you. That's not even, okay, sorry, my bad. Portland State was the lowest yards, but, let's be real here. So that's something right there that immediately stands out to me. And when I'm looking at the overall schedule for Boise State, down the stretch, I have my concerns, okay? The Wyoming game is something that just extremely stands out to me. And even though the San Jose State game is a 21-point victory, they were not winning that game and dominating the game. Some very questionable San Jose State play calls changed the entirety of that game. They were getting ready to be down, I think it was 21-0, if San Jose State didn't call just an asinine offensive play call inside the 5, and then they tried some type of trick play late in the game, to cause them to be down even further. It was a game of inches, and they really struggled in that area. So there's just a couple of games on the stretch here that really concern me. The Nevada game, the Wyoming game, beating Oregon State, that's whatever, And then when I go to the UNLV side of it, obviously the game in Hawaii was very concerning, especially because they had the 2-week rest. But when I look at games in Hawaii, they're always funky games, right? UCLA won by 3. They were favored by almost 17 points. Let's see. Boise State won by 21. Not something I'm sure they didn't cover that game either. I'm almost positive. You have your win against Nevada. And then they just beat New Mexico, a game they were underdog in. So these are just the type, those games I always kind of, if you have to travel to Hawaii, it's a different beast. The time zones are way different, it's just different, right? So I don't really give the UNLV Hawaii game too much credence. But I think we're in a spot here. Let's see what the line's at. It's 3.5. And that feels right to me. But I also feel like this is definitely a spot where UNLV could break through. And there could be legitimate, you could look back and be like, oh, okay, well, they played them very similar to the first game. They, were physical in the trenches and they were more explosive. That checks a lot of boxes, especially in a game that is predicted to be close. So I'm going to take UNLV here. I do feel like they're going to win. But there is value in 3.5 because you can obviously cover on several key numbers there. But I feel like they're gonna break through here. I think they're an amazing teaser piece. If you wanted to take it up to 9.5, that is amazing value. But yeah, I feel like they're going to be competitive and make it happen. So, but anyway, that's going to be it for today's episode. If you enjoy the content, please like, comment, share, subscribe. send it to a family member, a loved one, someone at the bar who watches football. So whatever you choose. I'm doing every single championship game this weekend, so there will be no games to suggest. And then I'm going to do a deep dive into the playoff once the bracket is released. I feel like there will be a ton of value and a ton of spots that will be overlooked. So, but other than that, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening again. And I'll catch you on the next one. Take care.